folks, welcome back to another video, and today I want to focus on the dome filter of Bitwig Studio 5.3, which is out since last week, at least the first beta version. And the dome filter is probably the weirdest addition, and most people probably don't know what to do with it, and I want to show you this in this video. And maybe this video is in the beginning a bit boring, but please stick around, it gets interesting later on, and I show you also some things you couldn't do in Bitwig Studio before. So if you like the video, please like and subscribe, of course, and if you don't want to patch all these examples up for yourselves, you can just download a preset in the description below, as always, okay? So let's go here to Bitwig Studio, and this is here my minimal setup to show you all the things. We have here an audio track. On this audio track, there's just a simple audio file, something I made recently. This is how it sounds. So nothing special, but it's enough to show you actually what the filter does. So then we have here a tool device. I need this later on. And we have here an EQ analyzer, right? So we can enable this. And then we can analyze here the frequency response of the grid. So this is the frequency response here of the grid with nothing in it. You can see there's a slight dip here at the end. It's very slight. So there's some processing happening. It's probably because of the oversampling here, anti-aliasing and so on. Okay, so let's move on to the dome filter here. So this is how it looks like. And the help here show us already a lot of good information. So we have 4 outputs here: wheel output, imaginary output, magnitude, and the phase out. And we can change the filter quality here in the inspector, right? From rough to normal to better to excellent. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So all these outputs here are kind of interesting because the real output is actually the input signal, but there are some phase shifts in there. And we can see this by just hooking up here the real output or the input here and the real output. You can see in the EQ curve analyzer here that we have no frequency dip, so there's no filtering happening, kind of, in the frequency response. But we have here a phase shift, right? We have a 90-degree phase shift at this position here. And you can change how many phase shifts you have across the frequency spectrum by changing here the filter quality from rough to normal. You can see we have 2 shifts here, better and excellent. So the more you change, or the higher the filter quality is, the more phase shifts you get across the frequency spectrum here. So here we have 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of 90 degrees shifts here, okay? The same with the imaginary output. So when we hook up here the imaginary output with the output, you can see we have the same response, but the difference is that this output here is always 90 degrees shifted to this output. You can see here the small shift, right? So that's the difference between the real output and the imaginary output, that the imaginary output is always 90 degrees offset by compared to this real output, at least in some frequency in some frequencies, right? So that's the difference. Then we have here the magnitude output, and the magnitude is probably better described in combination with the phase output, because the phase output gives you the phase response of everything that goes into the dome filter. It looks like this here, very weird, right? And this, what you can see here, is the phase response of this test signal of the EQ curve analyzer. We can also put in here our audio signal, and this looks like this, right? So what can you do now with these outputs? So you can do multiple things. So first up, you can just take this phase output here and feed it into a sine function. The sine function takes in a phase input, right? And it tries to resynthesize or recreate the signal that goes into that via this phase signal into sine waves, multiple sine waves. And yeah, this gives you kind of this output here. But we also need the amplitude information. So sometimes signals are louder, sometimes our signals are quieter, right? And we can use then here this magnitude for that. So all we need to do is to use a multiply, which you may already know can change the amplitude of something. Go into that, and or maybe use this as an input, and then this magnitude here for the loudness. So we can recreate the audio input here just by using the phase, converting this to a sine function here, or to multiple sine waves, and then using here the magnitude to change the loudness of these individual parts. So you can recreate or resynthesize the signal already here, but these two outputs, okay? And the interesting part now is that we can modify this phase signal here with multiple things. So first up, we can take, let's go here to phase and then use, where's the shift? Let's use a shift here, right? So we can already modify the pitch of the signal by using maybe an LFO here. And then, yeah, modulators here. Let's go to 100% here. Just one. Make this bipolar, so we modulate also in the other direction, and then use here sine. Let's see how this sounds. So this gives you some kind of pitch wobble because we shift back and forth, right? And then we resynthesize the signal and you get this kind of nice pitch wobble. So you can modify the pitch. We can also switch here to an, let's say, saw. So it's more like a ramp. And with this, we get kind of an pitch shifter. And if you take something like as an oscillator, you can get higher, or we can also switch this into kilohertz. This is faster. Let's see how this sounds. It's probably not a pitch shifter. It's more like it sounds actually like an frequency shifter. That's also probably why we have this dome filter, because it's some kind of byproduct of the frequency shifter. Some of these internal structures here are needed, or the dome filter is needed for some of these internals here of the frequency shifter. So this is the simplest frequency shifter you can build. You can also create some kind of pitch wobble, as I showed you, just with this simple setup by using here the phase, resynthesizing this with a sine function, and then using the magnitude to change the amplitude or the gain, or the amplitude is probably the right word for this. Okay, so that's what you can do here with these two outputs. You can also change here this for lag, or you can put a filter on it and see what comes out of it, right? Let's see how this sounds. Let's use a low pass filter on that. Or let's use a low pass here on the magnitude. some distortion, a bit of low pass, maybe interesting for some, yeah, when to recreate something like RC20, right? You want to make things sound old, or maybe tape emulations. You can use this kind of filter for that if you want to. Okay, so this is using here the phase and the magnitude for recreating the things. We can also do something weird. We can say we want to use that, and or let's say here with the phase shift, I showed you earlier, you can do a phase shift, right? So maybe let's start with this. We can do here multiple phase shifts. So this means when we combine this with the real signal or with the input signal, let's blend it together here. Let's use the input and then this one. You blend it together, you get some kind of notch filter, right? We have here some frequency dips, right? And we can change the strength of this here with the blend, of course. We can also use the imaginary signal here to shift these dips to a different position. And we can also use a blend between the real, imaginary, and then go into that. We have something like this. Then we can slightly move these dips around, just 90 degrees, right? So with this, it sounds like this. So you can create some kind of weird filter if you want to. That's that. Then we can do something weirder. We can use this part here. We can also create another part, let's say a sine oscillator here. And we can feed it here a pitch. This one. Something like this. And we can say, let's say constant. You can define your frequency, let's say 500 Hertz. Disable this, and then we get here a sine oscillator output. And then we do the same thing to the sine oscillator we do to the audio input here, right? And then we use a multiply, or let's say 2 multiplies. And then we multiply here the real signal with the real output of the sine, and the imaginary with the imaginary of the sine. So the audio input and the sine, and we just cross modulate them, kinda. And then we subtract here this one from this one. And what we get now is something weird here. You can see it's filtering pretty hard, but it's not a filter. You can hear this here in a moment. So let's use the audio input. It sounds like frequency shifted, right? So we use here an attenuate. Let's disable this. We don't need the analyzers here anymore. So we can create here our own frequency shifter using a sine oscillator. And by just cross-modulating or audio modulating here these two dome filters, we get a frequency shifter. And we can change here the frequency shift by, let's say, 1K. You can also modulate in the different direction. I think you need to exchange this here for an add. And then you can do some weird things, of course, with the sine wave, right? You can phase modulate it here. You can change the settings of the sine oscillator. So you can do some weird things you can't do with other frequency shifters. Also here, the frequency shifter, or the native one, has also a phase input. And with this, you kind of phase modulate the internal sine oscillator. So this works also here with the internal sine oscillator. You can see this here, phase modulation of the shifting oscillator. So that's basically this one here. Attenuate range. So you can phase modulate the internal sine oscillator here with this frequency shift plus module inside of the grid. And by the way, I heard that the frequency shifter plus is also coming to the chain here. It wasn't just, it wasn't ready for the beta 1. So it's coming probably in the next beta releases also to the chain. So this is a frequency shifter, which is pretty nice, but I didn't want to stop there, right? I want to do something more. And I figured out a way to actually make something happen that wasn't possible before. So instead of, let me see, cut this here, cut this off. So we still modulate or do the same thing here, but then we filter this whole thing here, say with the cell and key filter, which is a pretty clean filter here, all the way down to 90 Hertz, 20 Hertz. We need to go lower actually. We need to filter actually at around 5 or 6 Hertz, but it's not possible in Bitwig Studio. Also use the Q limit here of 0. Pull this down, also filter this here, okay? So then we have here now these cross-modulated signals, and we have cut everything off except the lowest frequencies. And then we take this and also multiply this by itself. So, right, pretty stupid, just modulate the signal with itself. Also here, like this. And then we add this together. So we summarize this, and we do here just an add. Pretty simple. You can also use a mix or blend or whatever you want to use, right? And then we take the root of this. Of course, we, quadrupled it here. I don't know how it's called, or take it by 2 or times 2 or multiply the signal by itself. So we can just take here the root of this. And with this, we kind of get a loudness, a magnitude. And the magnitude of the difference between the input signal and the sine oscillator. So this is kind of interesting because we can take now the sine oscillator output here and change the volume of this sine oscillator. So we take the sine oscillator, right, the output of the sine oscillator, and we change the volume of the sine oscillator with this magnitude we just calculated. Something like this. So now your question is, why use the sine oscillator, right? What's the reason? So what we do here is we figure out the magnitude of a single frequency inside of the frequency spectrum. And we do this by cross-modulating here the audio input with a sine oscillator. And then we remove the sidebands, let's say the bad outcome or the bad side effect of the frequency modulation. And we remove the sidebands and just single out the difference between this signal and the sine oscillator. And then we use this as a magnitude or as a gain modulation. So we change the loudness of the sine oscillator here at a specific frequency. So let's use here a tool, or not a tool device, let's use a test tone. This one here, mix, and let's go to 100 Hertz, gain, and so on. So let's pull down the mix here. You can hear the test tone, right? Pretty normal. We also use here an EQ plus just to see what's going on. Right? And then we put on here our new FX grid, and we'd say we want to only extract frequencies at around 500 Hertz. Okay, so we want to filter only this out. So now we bring in here the test tone. You can see nothing really happens. Something happens here, but then we change the frequency. Oh, we need to actually put in here the attenuate. So you can see at 500 Hertz, exactly this frequency, we get here something out. And all the other frequencies are muted. So what this means is we have actually an FFT filter here created just with this setup. And we filter everything out that's not this frequency. So we can say we have, let's say here, 100 Hertz. And then we pull here this up. Nothing happens. Then we go here to 100. Bam, we have a signal, right? So now we can analyze the signal for specific frequencies that are very, very narrow. Exactly just one single sine frequency. So this makes this actually a single bin frequency recreator or resynthesizer or whatever. So we can take in here the audio signal and we filter everything out, but only this frequency here comes out. Or let's say 500 Hertz or 1K. Okay. So now the next question is, of course, yeah, that's just one single frequency. Can we actually do more, right? And yes, you can do more because we have Bitwig and we just can duplicate everything and extract more frequencies at the same time. So my idea is instead of using here a constant with a frequency, I mean, you can do this, but we can also just use, let's say, notes. So let's use here pitch, right? And we can use nodes to filter for certain nodes inside of the frequency spectrum. And let's say we use here a voice stacking, right? So we use here stack modulator, this one, and actually, so we use here voice stacking, we go to 16 voices. And then each voice gets a different pitch. So let's say here, we go up to what's 36 or something like this. I don't know. So it's a bit quiet. So maybe amp up here the gain. We lose a bit of gain here in the process. Let's use this and 16 dB or maybe 12 dB. So, right, so we start at E1 and then we have here for each stack, we have a different pitch that we want to analyze. We have 16 bins. And of course, if you want to really do FFT resynthesis, you need at least 4,000 or something like this, 4,000 of these patches. And we have only 16. So you can go in and just duplicate this here, I don't know, 20 times. And on each patch, you change the offset frequency, which is also possible. We can do this here for a moment. Let's go here to 16. That's too narrow maybe for one. So let's go 32. Right, so you put this here into an FX grid. In the second one here, you take a different offset. I don't know. Let's go up here. Six. Okay, like this one. Right, so this FX grid covers here all the first bins, and then the second one covers all the bins above that, and so on. Again, duplicate this here multiple times and change the offset, and so on. They can slowly try to recreate or to resynthesize the whole signal by adding these bins. But you can see it kind of works inside the grid. It's not not super clean, but it kind of works, and it's probably more interesting for some creative effects. Would be nice if you could go lower here with the low pass filter actually to make this signal a bit more clean. You can also exchange this here for just a normal low pass LD, or maybe here this one. But all these low pass, the lowest frequency is 20 Hertz, so it doesn't go lower. So that's that. You can also just remove this here for a bit. And yeah, we just have here multiple frequencies now, like in the beginning. And then we can say we want to, instead of analyzing, we can analyze here this just by a quantizer. But with the quantizer, for this sine oscillator here, the problem here is that we now analyze for these pitches. What we want to take, actually, if you want to make a pitch correction, you want to analyze for the initial frequencies and then put them on a different place, right? That's what you want to do. So we can create here a second one. So this one is only for analyzing, and this one is for playing in a different place, or playing the sine partials in a different place, but using the magnitudes of the original signals and apply them to this sine oscillator. I think this should be more like a pitch correction here. So let's use here D sharp minor. And it gets more interesting when you pitch this up. Maybe not this interesting. Anyway, so yeah, the dome filter is actually a nice addition to the grid. You can do stuff you couldn't do before. We can create some frequency shifters, also some very weird ones, and maybe pitch shifting, and we can use it for some type of FFT resynthesis stuff. And like I said, you couldn't do this before. Now it's possible. So a nice addition in Bitwig Studio 5.3. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Leave a like, leave a subscription, and I'll see you in the next video.